All right, it's a later Infinite Plane Saturn day than usual. I wanted to wait till after Trump's speech in Atlanta because of the year. I think it's a leap year or something. Today is the 216th day of the year, and that is generally on 8/4. And 8/4 is the day of the prophecy. So this is still the eve of the Trumpocalypse. The ear being pierced by the AR-15 was just a warm-up act to get us to pay attention. But the big one's coming likely tomorrow if you go by the assessment of a number of, well, mainly Jurassic Liars has synced it up with this date. There's a few other latecomers who claim to have some associations, and I think they ultimately just don't want to give credit where credit is due. Not that it's about credit, but it's about truth. And we need to know how someone arrives at something. That's why we were speaking about that false prophet the other night, because he was able to convey this idea that he had this notion that he had a vision of Trump being shot and his eardrum being busted, and this was a prophecy. But when you take that and look at it in the context of the rest of his videos, it it's drowned out by BS. It's what you would call a sharpshooter fallacy. He's taken a million shots and he found something that was close, but then if you look at it in context, everything was wrong. Or the things he got right were things that you couldn't get wrong, like Trump was wearing a red hat, or there were lots of people there. But then he also specified mountain tops in the background. There's no mountains in Butler, Pennsylvania. So this isn't about prophecy in that sense or guesses. And especially from our perspective, specifically here at Infinite Plane Radio, we are looking at the synchronization, which is deliberate, between the entertainment in all media and the news. Entertainment is just a subset of government. I mean, it's really mind control, propaganda with entertainment being a side effect. A little sweetness they put in the poison, but its purpose is world view formation, and they entrain the collective psyche to the news cycles through every other form of media. And we've been observing this and making informed predictions based on using, quote, predictive programming as a predictive model. Sort of like you would guess how a book's going to end. And when you've read enough spy novels or thrillers or horror books, I mean horror themed books, whatever, every genre tends to fit a certain pattern, and you can kind of tell at the beginning who's going to kiss who the bad guy is. It's not difficult to do what we're doing here if you're paying attention, but you have to appreciate the entire thing as a unified field, media as monolith and inseparable from government. In fact, I don't even think of it as governments. There's only one government. This conspiracy theory about the New World Order is coming. Good news and bad news. Good news is the New World Order is not coming. Bad news, the Old World Order, which has always been and will always be, is still in charge and has been since before you were born. So let's just jump into. Let's see who's here first. Let's make sure we have enough people here in the raft. I see 42 people. So yes, tomorrow, August 4th, huge day. 8448. These are codes that we have seen consistently used throughout this Trump head wound thing. Now I'm going to take calls the second hour because I want to make sure we get to all of our new information first, and then we'll open up phones for hour two. So 84, August 4th, is the 216th day of the year. 216, according to Pythagoras, is what they call the Phoenix cycle, the number of years it takes between incarnations. So you have Phoenix 216, which is 6 cubed, or 6 times 6 times 6. So you have the 666, the Phoenix, and these are all building up on this specific date, which is Obama's birthday, first black president of the United States, and it's the birthday of Hakeem Jeffries, first black Speaker of the House, Democrat Hakeem Jeffries, also 8/4. But moreover, 8/4 and the reverse 4/8 have been consistently applied and associated with this Trump head wound scenario. In fact, the last time Jurassic Liars and I spoke, I mentioned Homelander in The Boys season finale, season 4, episode 8, 4/8. That's the one that was Assassination Run, where the guy's got the blood on his face. The Trump guy has blood on his face. This is, again, an existing set of patterns we've picked up on. The 216 number also applies in a few other ways, as we have described, like the weekend's birthday is February 16th, so 216. What's the significance there? Well, his name, Abe L, or Abe, like Abe Lincoln, or Abel, Cain and Abel. And what is he known for? His Super Bowl halftime performance, running around with this grotesque head wound. And then he received some award, and he goes up on the stage with his bleeding head, and it's on 11/23, the day after Kennedy was shot. So there's been this consistent use of the Super Bowl halftime to convey these bigger patterns within this meta scripted story, which is why it's significant that at the last Super Bowl, Brock Purdy, quarterback, was weirdly compared to Lee Harvey Oswald. And then Brock Purdy, BP 2 and 16, 216, which is something I connected to Betty Pearson in Fallout, the one who conducted the coup, took over Vault 33, cleaned up the massacre, but left one drop of blood on the side of the little Trump figurine's head. So again, BP, Butler, Pennsylvania, 216. So these are, again, repeated patterns and themes. The 8448 thing is just hugely represented here. And so tomorrow, 84, just a few hours, is a very big day. So we'll start with that, but let's go ahead and see who has arrived. Diana South, Let's Go, Ollie Goering, Ted Stryker, Anx G, Frank Murr, Tominoid 3. Yeah, this is Eve of the Trumpocalypse. Roxy W, Gematria 101. Ted Stryker says Trump was feisty. Yeah, it was a great speech. He's actually, he's a really good public speaker. Whatever you think about him, he's, kind of a comedian in a way. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. But he's not just a teleprompter reader. He's a skilled actor. But I think he has a lot of natural ability to speak off the cuff and riff off the audience, which is what makes him entertaining. But we have to keep in mind, too, that he had a #1 TV show for 13 seasons? The Entered Apprentice? No, The Apprentice. The Mason is called the Entered Apprentice before he gets his head wound, when he's raised to Master Mason as Hiram Abiff. So we're awaiting Trump's Hiram Abiff Tannen phase when he gets his real head wound, which is, again, supposed to be tomorrow. Joined by Messianic Charlatan, Armin Ree. J. Diggs says tomorrow is the 303rd day of the year, 303rd day of the war that started on 10/7, which is, okay, I see. 9 months, 29 days, 9/11. Yeah, there's a thing here, though, that I'm kind of aware of. I try to avoid dates and numbers between dates or reading too much into it, because this is where the Texas sharpshooter fallacy thing comes into play. Last night someone mentioned, are you employing this with the Mountain Dew cans? And I'm like, no. We look at the last half dozen Mountain Dew cans and apply them to real-time news. It's pretty obviously coordinated, as crazy as that sounds, but we can demonstrate it with receipts. But it's also very possible to give yourself some leeway and then say these periods of time mean something because the numbers. Well, first we have to establish that 303 or 333 or 7777 means something objective. Because I see these people on Twitter and I block most of them. They're like, well, tomorrow is 6 years, 6 months, and 6 days from this event. And there's no way man could have planned this. Well, no, this is obviously a contrived coincidence. I mean, that's kind of what the sharpshooter fallacy means, that you have a million shots fired and you find a tight grouping and you draw a target around it. So you wouldn't be able to predict anything with it, but you would be able to claim predictive capabilities after the fact. And that's what we're looking at with false prophets, like the guy I mentioned last night, the one who said that he had a vision from Jesus and Trump got his eardrum blown out, is that he made 100 bad prophecies and gave himself a lot of ammunition, thereby guaranteeing that by shooting at that barn door, eventually he's going to have a tight cluster. And after the last Super Bowl, I think we had pretty much discredited 90% of the Twitter prophets using this method. Messianic Charlatan says, Axel, the British stabber, is a promo for Eddie Murphy's movie star comeback. His role's name is Axel. Okay, yeah, I heard about that. The stabber's name was Axel, and that got me thinking about what Synchromorpheus had posted in Gilded once about this thing that's called I believe it's called nominal determinism. The idea that you live up to your name. Not that there's anything like objectively um, meaningful about the name and how your life ends up, but when you're looking at movie scripts, and this is often intentional in literature, but when you're looking at psyops, oftentimes the names of the actors have very special significance for the bigger picture. And I can point to a number of them. We've talked about Nick Cruz and Patrick Crusius, the cross thing in the Children's Crusade narrative that became March for Our Lives. In the name of various other shooters, again, this is all just indication of coordination and the authors themselves. And when we look at the photography at some of these psyops, from January 6th to 7/13, these are photographers who are known for having taken historically significant photos in the past. So they're insiders. They're making history, like literally. Like in that movie I just watched, that rom-com Fly Me to the Moon. They are alluding to several times the guy who works for the government, but Nixon's not in the know, the guy who arranges the fake moon landing. He says, quote, "We're making history." And that is quite literally what they're doing because they're newsbenders. If you look at a psyop, just in isolation, just take a mall shooting, a fake shooting, but it's treated as real. The government, the authorities, the law enforcement, EMT, they're all in on it because these are all conspiracies. We're not conspiracy theorists. There are active conspiracies taking place, and we're just pointing them out because it's obvious. But when you look at one of these things, it's scripted, it has actors, it has directors, and it's put on TV in the news. It gets published in the newspapers, and it goes into the history books. They are writing our history in advance. And it's not just these dumb events, these mass shootings that are so easy to decode or the terror attacks, but it also applies to the celebrity stuff. A lot of the celebrity stuff, the court dramas, and these are all part of the same rigged ecosystem of mass media. Okay, let me see who else has arrived here. Again, we have quite a lot of people waiting for tomorrow, and we're going to be live tomorrow to cover everything that happens. Yep, Plain Dakota tomorrow is 8/4. Supposedly, it's supposed to take place in Ohio. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be, in my opinion. I mean, it could be Ohio could be referenced. Ohio has been referenced in the story numerous times. I've been pointing out that Washington Times article that said the most important 42 miles in America right now pertaining to the election is the stretch of land between Palestine, Ohio, and Butler, Pennsylvania. So Ohio, the mushroom cloud, this has been part of the narrative this entire time. Ollie Goering says Isabel Ann may know something about the Jupiter Mars thingy. Yeah, Isabel Ann was here in chat talking about the astrological alignments that said it would be a good day for a head wound. And minutes after she said that, it happened. Like, we actually had someone using astrology and astronomy and an understanding of the different components in play, knowing as we do that ultimately the fake news events are in many ways encoded in the astrotheological tale. That's why you have all the Christ typology imposed over Trump, Christ himself being a personification of the Son in this context. So we had someone make this claim just a few minutes before the thing popped off. And it wasn't real. Nobody died, nobody cried, the sniper didn't die, there's no patsies, there's no second shooter, no third shooter, no inside job, no DEI Secret Service agents negligently placed there to endanger the president. None of the above. Trump isn't some stage magician who found out that the deep state's going to kill me, so I'm going to fake my own assassination attempt as though that would stop it, as has been posited by some people. No, you can go ahead and drop all the MSM plus. Remember, the mainstream media worldview is an edifice of lies. When you add on top of it second shooters because you don't believe their story, or because there's hints that there's more to the story, there's a cover up. Now you're like Scooby-Doo and the gang in the mystery van trying to unmask who really did it. Now it's a who done it? No. It was always a what is it, and it's a psyop. It's a hoax. It's not a who done it. So a lot of people get caught up in these who done it stories, the truthers following these red herrings. And this is such an obvious pattern. If there's a mass shooting, there's going to be a second shooter narrative somewhere, almost all of the time. Or they're going to call it a false flag, or they're going to blame SSRIs, which opens the door to blaming MK Ultra employed by psychiatrists. I mean, people get lost. And my point here is that the alternative media, the conspiracy realm, is MSM plus. It doesn't subtract. It doesn't take the negative route we take. It doesn't insist on skepticism, but rather compulsory belief, and they can see that it's an edifice of lies, so they pile a bunch of stuff on top of it. So again, the MSM plus explanations are there to waste your time. Look how many decades people have been chasing this JFK story before anybody got close to getting it right, that it's fake. That Lee Harvey Oswald didn't shoot Kennedy, Stanley Kubrick did, and it was a movie. Okay, continuing. Diz Nataz says, Kill Tony used Building 7 imagery to promote their Madison Square Garden show, which is in a few days. RFK and Cheryl Hines were at the last Kill Tony event. Fascinating. Okay, I'll have to look into that. Building 7 imagery at the Madison Square Garden show. I've been trying to figure out what that means, the whole Building 7 thing. And I saw someone suggest that I think, and this might be good, might actually be it, that Building 7 is the G between the Masonic pillars of the Twin Towers. Yes, Ollie Goering, that's correct. The Algol star thing on 713. And 713 is a very interesting and intriguing day. A lot of conspicuous celebrity deaths that day. We could talk about the Manhattan blackouts 42 years apart that really opened my eyes to this connection, this correlation between 42, the blackout, and how often this association has been made. Because, we look at this, black and white duality, left, right. They play on all these different polarities and they create this schism. Well, the black and the white numerically you'll see represented as 42 or 33. One associated with Saturn and the other one with the sun. One with descent, falling, gravity. The other one with ascent or ascension, rising. These are just associations we picked up. It's not a coincidence that to leave the material realm, to leave the earth, you have to go Mach 33. That tells you that NASA is a mystery school. It's an Egyptian mystery school. It is not really about, quote, space travel. That's just allegory for higher states of consciousness. But most of the lower rung wouldn't know this. So you can get distracted by the clown show, the fakery of the ISS, but you have to remember what it really is. NASAtology. Like, isn't there something in the Bill of Rights about the government not instituting a state religion or something? Because it seems like we don't have a separation of church and state in any meaningful way if they've instituted a state religion, NASAtology. And although they don't punish you, they make fun of you if you don't believe their miracles. Like, you don't believe in moon landings? Yeah, the moon landing, man walking on the moon, is a miracle that reinforces their faith. In fact, it validates their science. Sort of like Jesus walking on water proves he's the Son of God, validates their Bible. So they provided these modern miracles. And one of the early miracles performed by many early Christians was levitation. I was looking at levitation of the saints and all these various levitating saints and how this was like a common thing. And this is what you're really, in my opinion, when you're looking at the astronauts and the ISS dangling, you're seeing the levitating saints, the elevated, the priesthood, up there with the God's eye view of the earth, where they have the overview effect. They're a little smarter than us now, and they've ascended above politics and just see the world as one thing to be saved. Now, they don't all have that, of course. Mark Kelly got back into politics. He never had the overview effect, but his brother Scott Kelly did. Virtual Reality Witness says conspiracies should be called hoaxes and lies because that's what they are. Okay, well, the thing is, the term hoax, though, unfortunately, has been malappropriated, and they call us hoaxers. It's like, no, I'm calling you a hoaxer because you're committing a hoax. You should call me a skeptic. They don't call us skeptics, they call us hoaxers. And what they do, it's a clever misdirection, because then they shift the burden of proof onto us. And it's like, the truth of it is, if any of these high-profile events were real, there would be pictures. You wouldn't be able to hide it. It would be a deluge. It would be a dream come true for Democrats if there really were 3 dozen kids murdered in a classroom. They would love to grandstand on top of that pile of real bodies. They would never let you forget it. But it's never happened. Same thing with the oceans. Had the ocean levels actually risen a few inches and Florida's underwater, the Democrats would love it. It would validate their entire premise. They would take total control in the name of saving Gaia. But there's no real evidence. Evidence matters, or at least it should. You'll furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war, said William Randolph Hearst, quoted by Diana South. Yeah, William Randolph Hearst, his daughter Patty Hearst was part of that Symbionese Liberation Army, which might have been a psyop, where she was kidnapped and then they later find her robbing banks, with her machine gun. And this became kind of a. I'll have to do some digging on it. I think it was fake, but whatever the case, this idea was that she had been brainwashed and she had Stockholm syndrome and she was somehow initiated into their group and had no choice or free will in the matter. But I've read some interesting takes on it, so I'll have to do some digging. But William Randolph Hearst, and I think there might have been some connections worth exploring between the Hearsts and the Kennedys. And JFK, I believe, wasn't JFK a photographer? Yeah, there's some material here on this that I might be getting into later, because Joker, who's a war photographer in Full Metal Jacket, is based off of JFK. It's one of the clues that we had that Trump was going to get the head wound on the right side. He's the guy, he has the target on the side of his head. There are so many movies where Stanley Kubrick hinted at what he's involved in. Well, not hinted. He's supplying predictive programming. It's not like he's being slick. They need you to see this. It's priming you. It's part of the programming. That's part of the processing of the collective psyche. And I bring up Kubrick again because in Fly Me to the Moon, he makes two appearances. He's this photographer. It's obviously him. They don't specifically say it, but they say his name before this guy appears on the screen. And this was a Scarlett Johansson movie, rom-com. But then previously she was in a similar romantic comedy, kind of a silly movie. It was called Asteroid City. And the character she spends her whole time with is actually based on Stanley Kubrick. And I didn't notice it at the time until after, but these connections are worth exploring between these two movies and her role connecting the two. So I'll be doing a bit of mind mapping connecting these movies and Margot Robbie and the Horror of Babylon thing, Barbie, it's all kind of tied into this. If you watched Fly Me to the Moon, there's a reason why Scarlett Johansson comes out in the pink suit, in the pink dress. But yeah, I took the time to go watch it. I'm not going to unrecommend it. I mean, if it actually might be damage control for when they eventually reveal that they had to fake the moon landing to trick the Russians, but space is real, space stations are real, we're going to Mars. Like, they're packaging this thing in such a way that it won't create any kind of a blowback. And I think they're perhaps waiting to disclose the fakery until the astronauts have all passed on. And the romantic comedy stuff I found to be personally kind of annoying in a way. I mean, you know how people watch horror movies and they're always like telling the character, stop, don't go in there. You're going to get killed. Like, you can't believe how dumb some of the characters are in these horror movies. They just don't see it. I feel the same way when I watch these romantic comedies. It's like, hey, she's love bombing you. She's doing research on you because she's going to figure out how to push your buttons, and then she's going to totally put on her bad face, and you're going to be cowed and controlled the rest of your life. Don't go with her. And they always fall for it. These romantic comedies are always just blueprints for toxic relationships in the making. And this movie was no exception. She was a total manipulator and a liar. And yet, at the end, he goes back to her. And it's like, you think that's going to change her nature? That put a ring on it, and then now suddenly she's going to convert? No. No. All right, let's continue. Yeah, Nasatology is what I call it. The Church of Nasatology is your official state religion. Jay Digg says Elvis's career lasted 24 years and he died at 42. And both these numbers have the same correlations. There's a reason why SpaceX uses 42 everywhere, X being the 24th letter, and the 4 and the 2, when combined, can form the sigil of Saturn. And you'll see this consistently. There's a reason why Jeff Bezos spent $42 million on a clock that he put inside of the Devil Mountain or Sierra Diablo Mountain. Who spends $42 million on a clock and then puts it inside of a mountain? And it has a capstone that actually reaches the daylight and provides its energy. But 42 and the clock, Chronos, Saturn, time, the cycles of time, and the clock is just another way of representing their god of time. And that's pretty much one of their top deities. Saturn, Saturn V rocket. We've been examining the space papacy and their symbolism for some time. And so when Elon Musk puts 42 on everything, 42,000 CubeSats, and we always see him playing with these numbers, but it's not because of some science fiction novel about a supercomputer who said the answer to everything is 42. It goes beyond just Musk and that particular book, because the other space popes like Bezos and Richard Branson are also seen using these same exact patterns. In fact, Branson finally launched to space. If you recall, he did his spaceplane jump on 7/11/2021, which was the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling to the ground. Allison Chain says, what are your opinion of the lighted string of pearls in the night sky said to be Starlink? Lies. Lies. Bearers of false witness. I haven't seen any credible evidence for those. And some people will say, well, I don't believe in satellites, so those must be balloons. No. Stratospheric balloons don't reflect the sun like that, and they wouldn't be moving at that speed. They don't orbit or simulate an orbit with the circulation. They're more or less stationary. But I am convinced that Starlink satellites are nothing more than Loon X, which was discontinued because it wasn't profitable, supposedly. Everything Starlink does was already achievable by Loon X with balloons. You think they just suddenly got rid of that and said, no, let's get rid of these stationary balloons that are easy to control and have orbiting CubeSats at 17,000 miles per hour that we can never touch or do maintenance on? I don't believe it. Elephant Tusk says, Tim Osman is the Paul Harvey of the PSYOP conspiracy world. Someone else said I was the Steve Ducey of Alex Jones's. Like, I don't know what's better or worse. Okay, let's move on. We have a couple of things I want to point out. This is one. So tomorrow is August the 4th. Michael in Truth posted this, and I'm pretty sure Jurassic Liars sourced this originally, but he's, quote, I was looking hard at Trump last year, 8-4 Montgomery, Alabama. They have a dove statue with a missing, darkened right eye, one wounded foot, and blood on its face. These are the exact injuries that the Antichrist will suffer during his head wound event. Again, 8-4 has been bearing quite a lot of predictive programming every single year that the prophecy has not come true. And someone pointed this out too. Here's the beaten up image of the Statue of Liberty with the space station above her head and the broken crown, which correlates to a couple Mountain Dew cans, weirdly. Liberty Chill. I guess you could say Star Spangled Splash because Francis Scott Key, but Liberty Chill and Frozen Fusion, which has to do with the H-bomb. But Liberty Chill has the crown that has fallen off of her head. But look at this. Synchromorpheus has pointed out that it's an almost identical pose to Trump raising his fist. And this, to me, is probably true and deliberate, and more indication of how scripted everything is. Every pose, every photo. Very intentional. So he asks, I wonder when that animation was created. Exactly. Everything makes sense when you understand or when you appreciate how monolithic it all really is. Arrest warrant issued for Power Ranger actor David Rivera. So apparently the Green Power Ranger had some kind of a rage incident in a parking garage and shoved an elderly man, and now he's on the run. I only bring this up because Marcus Goldfinch, the person I'm suing, used to be the Red Power Ranger, one of his roles. And there's a very well-known Power Ranger curse, which we could do a whole documentary on. Power Rangers killing people, taking their money, using samurai swords on their best friends. One of them did millions of dollars in COVID fraud. One of them auto-castrated in jail. there are all kinds of strange things happening with the Red Power Rangers, the curse of the Red Power Ranger. And I've been wondering, when is it going to hit Goldfinch? Am I the vehicle? Am I going to bring it? Am I the curse for this Red Power Ranger? And I think this is a good sign that the Green Ranger caught it. It's like that movie Final Destination, where a group of people are on a plane, and then a few of them get off so they don't die, and they all feel like they cheated death. And one by one, death catches up to them. And I think that's what's happening right now. That he's running out of time. There aren't too many more Rangers in front of him. I think he's up next to be the next recipient for the Curse of the Red Ranger. Tom Cruise reportedly to end the Paris Olympics with an epic stunt to pass the torch to LA. Yep. Tom Cruise, who's done thousands and thousands of parachutes and motorcycle jumps off of cliffs, he's something of a daredevil if it's not all CGI, and I don't think it is. I think he's literally this crazy. But yeah, he's going to be doing some kind of stunt, and Synchromorpheus had pointed out here that the way he looks on the motorcycle, and he was doing some Mission Impossible 8 filming, and he was seen in Paris, looks sort of like the Liberty Chill, Statue of Liberty, not wearing the crown. The significance of Tom Cruise in all of this is hard to overstate. He's not just the Jesus of Scientology, but his entire catalog of movies has been building up a certain archetype, and it really culminated, I think, with Top Gun and Top Gun 2. But Top Gun 2, and I talked about the significance of this movie, the conspicuous symbolism, the fact that it was produced and chronologically spaced from the first one 33 years apart, that every character has a name that's associated with the sun god or the dying, resurrecting sun god motif. You got Phoenix, Rooster, a Christ thing. Phoenix was a Christ thing. You have the Hangman, who calls himself good and a savior, like God, and he happens to be played by an actor who's 33. But Hangman, Phoenix, Rooster. We've been going through the different instances of these movies that Tom Cruise has been in that reinforce the same symbolism, and it's very consistent. So Tom Cruise being here is very significant. I'll probably put together an article that compiles everything about him and the role that he plays, and what I think his big role happens to be. And remember, he was in Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick, so he's as close as you could be to the capstone level of the Lie World Order. And after 9/11, he was delivering a speech at the first Oscars post 9/11, and he gave a shout out to Stanley Kubrick, who, like, I think a lot of people here believe, directed 9/11. So here's the Freedom Fusion Slurpee. Looks like a desert, looks like Arizona. Target date June 17th. Not sure what it means, but we're just noticing because there's been a few instances where these things have been predictive, and the pitch black one was the most recent. And here's a scene from, or a screenshot, this is a screen cap from the movie I just referenced, Asteroid City, where the Kubrick character is looking at a fake mushroom cloud. Okay, continuing here, Jay Eslet says, do you have a music playlist? I have it in mind to do a playlist and put it all on my 24/7 stream, hopefully this weekend. Jungle Jim says, as a 90s teen, we definitely used to make fun of kids that watched the Power Rangers. Yeah, I recall feeling a little I was a little kind of I was in disbelief that people found it to be entertaining. I thought it was kind of cheesy, but maybe that's part of its charm. I never got that much into it. Ollie Goering says, trippy fentanyl Power Rangers. Yeah, they're a cursed bunch. One of them had strapped an elderly couple to an anchor and dumped them in the lake after forcing them to sign over a bunch of their property in some kind of a contract. And then one of them got in a fight over a girl and grabbed his samurai sword and killed him. And then you had the other Power Ranger who beat his. This is terrible stuff. And Marcus Goldfinch was this guy's body double. He beat his wife half to death, and then took his own life before the police could show up. I mean, sad stories. Elephant tusks, yes. Skylar DeLeon is the Power Ranger who murdered the elderly couple after throwing them off a boat with the anchor, and then went to jail. Now, this is the thing. That one has a twist because Skylar wanted a sex change and needed the money, and then went to jail and then used a razor blade to just DIY it, do it yourself, and has since, I think, probably recovered mentally in some ways. I think I saw some articles that were more recent. Person seemed more stable, but atrocious stuff. And again, this is the curse of the Red Ranger, and the Green Ranger's on the run. So if you see him, if you see something, say something. Okay, let's move on here. Speaking of Stanley Kubrick and the whole thing of Space Odyssey, Boeing's cursed ISS mission, still cursed. They may have to send Elon Musk's Dragon to pick them up. So I'm not sure what the story is here, but there's predicted programming elements for Tom Cruise to die in space. Just to give you a spoiler alert, Tom Cruise is likely going to die in space. And you can look it up on South Park. He's dead on the moon. He's Major Tom, ground control to Major Tom, Space Oddity. There's some connections here we've made before, but here's what I'm noting now. The Boeing capsule, the Calypso, is going to be stranded in space forever. And the Calypso is out of the Odyssey, Homer's The Odyssey. And Calypso's the nymph who keeps Odysseus captive for 7 years, stranded on an island before he can go back and rescue his kingdom. So the name is just has stranded written all over it. Between that and Boeing, it's a recipe for disaster. That would be nominative determinism. That these names, Boeing is definitely an epitaph for disaster. But Calypso, stranded in space, Space Odyssey, Homer's The Odyssey. There's some kind of connection here. It's a Greek tragedy in the making. Musk is going to send SpaceX up there. I'd like to think that something interesting would happen, like Tom Cruise takes a ride to help save them, and then somehow, because he's going to be the first civilian to do a spacewalk, and I have a feeling he's going to somehow he's going to, like Major Tom in the song, end up stranded in space. Fake space. Let me catch up on comments. There's quite a lot happening this evening. And I'm going to open up phones here in about 15 minutes. Dinah South says, I don't remember Tom Cruise's face looking like that. Yeah, do you remember all the stories about Tom Cruise not looking like himself and Tom Cruise mask stories? And we were talking about how Thomas means twin, and the twin cross is the cross of resurrection, the second coming. So you have a lot of twin cross stuff around Tom Cruise. And Top Gun 2 has a lot of significance for his future role. If you watch Top Gun 2, the scene where he goes Mach 10 in that plane, and they make a flat Earth joke, in that scene, there's a few numbers they flash on the screen, like Mach 7.3, his birthday 7.3, almost born on the 4th of July. But these numbers are all highly significant to this bigger picture. Like the Challenger explodes at 73 seconds. He's going into space, or almost space, going Mach 10. And then he lands in this field in some small town, and he goes into a diner, and people think he's an alien. And that whole scene is just a repeat of what Yuri Gagarin did when he went to space. He landed in some field, and someone asked if he was an alien. So the Yuri Gagarin First Man in Space achievement was repeated by Tom Cruise, which has a great deal of significance because Yuri Gagarin died a mysterious, fiery death. He was this national hero. And, he was like their Neil Armstrong. And Tom Cruise's role, again and again, has been the hero archetype, the hanged man, the hanged God, the Christ stuff is all over it, the Gnostic Scientology Jesus. It's been following his meta-scripted character for a long time, his historic personage. And I was noting that, his proximity to Stanley Kubrick has significance for a few reasons. One being the premier space faker, now Tom Cruise. And then you have Stanley Kubrick's daughter, who happens to be a Scientologist. Now, how does that make sense? It all makes sense when you realize that Scientology is no different than NASAtology, the space religions, the new paradigm. And I guess the difference would be Scientology has better actors, NASAtology has better special effects. But when it comes down, well, only with their launches. But no, actually, no, I have to take that back. But it is part of the future religion, and that's why it's significant that L. Ron Hubbard, who created Scientology, was BFFs with Jack Parsons, the Crowleyite Satanist at the genesis of NASA, JPL, along with Marjorie Cameron, the movie star. So you just take in movies, rocketry, and Mystery Babylon dressed up like science fiction, throw it all in a cauldron, stir it up, and what do you have? You have our modern religion of NASAtology. Oh, and one more thing. That movie Fly Me to the Moon had a number of Boeing references that weren't good. Stuff is always exploding, stuff on fire. And they kept referencing Apollo 1. So, Apollo 1, the three astronauts incinerated 19 years later, practically to the day, the Challenger explosion. Then you had, and there's connections between all these events. Challenger explodes 1 minute 13 seconds. Columbia explodes. It's the 113th shuttle launch. Again, 1 minute 13 is 73 seconds. But they make numerous jokes about Boeing. Well, Boeing didn't really become a big joke until after Leave the World Behind came out. So Fly Me to the Moon would already have been produced. So these are jokes that are making sense now. They're current. It's concurrent programming. Lord Laney says it's morphin time. Snip, scissors emoji, hot dog emoji. J Dig says you called the SpaceX crash a few years ago. Yeah, what I had put in my Metascript breakdown, and you know what? I cannot find the manuscript for Metascript Decoded. I plan to do an updated version of it, adding in 4 more years of info, and it's like it got deleted, which is really strange. But I'll have to find it. But I'd pointed out that there's some significance with the dragon and the storyline in Revelation of the dragon bringing down a third of the stars. And I had suggested that Musk might be involved inadvertently in knocking down the space station. Well, it turns out that he's being contracted to drag down the space station. Tomanoid says not a good omen for Butch and Sunni dance. Yes, not at all. And let me point this out too. Look at the Gemini mission patch. Tell me you don't see 9/11. Gemini mission patch, Twin Towers and the strike zones marked with stars. And on this particular mission, they launched during Gemini, and you had two wills. So it seems like, okay, you have the twin symbolism here. Is this the 9/11 we're waiting for, the space 9/11? If I was writing it, Musk would be there to save the day, and Musk had already agreed to be the one to take Tom Cruise up there. And there's this thing called Axion, which is a movie station and an inflatable film studio that's going to be attached to the space station, and that's where Tom Cruise is going to make his movie. And Musk is going to be involved with taking him there. So if I was writing the script, I would have Tom Cruise go up to the space station to save those two astronauts. Like that would be dramatic. And then at some point there'd be some kind of a glitch, an error, and Tom Cruise gets sucked out the hatch and ends up on the moon. You can visit his skeleton in 100 years. That's what you see in the David Bowie video for, is it Lazarus or Black Star? You see Major Tom on the moon, and there's this cult of cat people on the moon who are worshiping his skull like he's some kind of a god. Which makes sense if you think about how the astronauts represent the ascended priesthood, and that the spacesuit, in many ways, it's really like the fishbowl and the astronaut's suit. It's a suit so you can go into the heavenly realm. Not all that different from like Dagon, the fish god. He puts on his fish suit with the big pope hat and he goes into the abyss. But yeah, these are religious garments. Is what I'm saying. Like the deep space images they show you, religious art. The astronaut suit, Could that survive in outer space for real? Doesn't have to. It's not just that they're cosplaying. It's a religious garb. That's why it's white. It represents the purity and ascension. It's all just symbolism. Dinosaur says, "What does Space Force do?" And Space Force and Build the Wall are both connected to something here. Build the wall, build the wall. Why? Because illegal aliens. Space Force, because why? Aliens. And you'll notice that the talking point on the right for some time has been aliens are demons, aliens are evil, a cosmic threat. The QAnoners believe this, and that Trump set up Space Force to save us from the reptilians. Like, they believe this stuff. But this goes back to Trackdown, the 1958 episode we referenced of the earliest known reference to Donald Trump specifically showing up in predictive programming, where he's a con man who goes into town and says, you need to build the wall because of a cosmic threat. And they arrest him. He gets arrested. We have to arrest Trump, they say. It's like, wow, that's spot on. 58 years in advance. 62 years in advance from the arrest. I mean, that is predictive programming. Like, Trump is real. The human being that plays that role is real, but they're not the same. Trump was a pre-existing, prefabricated character who exists on the world stage. He's a construct. Jay Digg says Miguel Connor was on the recent Higherside chats. He went into the connection between Elvis and David Bowie, and he mentioned a black star being an omen for death. Elvis had a song called Black Star, an Omen for Death. The connections between Elvis and Bowie go beyond just the shared birthday. You have a few things. The Man Who Fell to Earth, the story David Bowie from Space Odyssey to Lazarus has a continuity. But there's a few things about this we could probably point out with the Elvis thing. But there's also a Kanye West connection. There's a David Bowie song he put out called 5 Years on his 1972 album, and it has him underneath a sign that says West, K West. And 5 Years is about the Savior who's going to be born in 1977, called the Starman. And there's a connection that, and I'm not the one who first pointed this out. In fact, Rolling Stones has a good piece on this, on the Bowie Kanye prediction. It's the most WTF conspiracy, according to Kanye and Bowie. The David Bowie and Kanye West conspiracy explained. Did Bowie predict the rapper? Is Kanye West really the Starman prophesied by David Bowie? And the connection is simply this. And this is the Rolling Stone says, Kanye is the reincarnation or continuation of Bowie. And the meaning of it is that there's a world stage persona that represents Starman or Mr. Satan or Lucifer. And this is what JL has been saying, that Elvis is like the personification, the image of the fallen angel. And the idea that he's being worshipped is very significant, that he's a musician. And so the rock star, the falling star, Starman, rock star man, these are all concepts and terms that are correlated. So David Bowie playing or being the effigy in the Tesla Roadster sent into space, Starman. Anagram for Mr. Satan, the man who fell to earth, the lightning bolt on his face. All this connects to the same body of symbols and the same theme. So you have this, Elvis dies in 77 and then Starman is born. But Bowie seems to be carrying a lot of the same symbolism. And a lot of artists do. Like, it's not just one person. It's this idolatry is like a mantle or a role that one plays on the world stage. And there is this continuity that weirdly connects Elvis, Bowie, and then Ye. So let's go ahead and bring up this article here just to show you some of the points here. And it's a lot deeper than what they say here. Is Ye really the Starman predicted in 1972? I wrote a few articles about this, and I watched the new Man Who Fell to Earth series, which has to do with the alien actually goes to Seattle, weirdly. But I added a lot more onto it. So here's the album cover from David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, and he's underneath the sign that says K West. And then 5 years later, of course, Ye is born. The breakdown goes on to say, the theory digs deeper beyond the superficial name drop, dissecting the meaning behind the first track, 5 years, paints a grim picture of a world set to end in 5 years unless the Starman descends to save humanity from itself. And then it goes on to the Black Star, which is more or less released posthumously. And in the lyrics, he says, I am a black star. I'm not a gangster. I'm a black star. This is suggested that it's Bowie as he's dying, conveying that the next one is the Black Star. So it's a reference to his successor, who will be the next person to carry out this personage. I don't know if Ye fits it as well though, but there's more to it, and it does tie into Ye weirdly enough, because you remember there were the 33 consecutive Burning Man festivals, which take place at a place called Black Rock City, Nevada. 1986 to 2019, you have 33 Burning Man festivals. At the final one in 2019, a 33-year-old was found dead. They put it on pause for COVID 2020, but on the date you would have had it, Ye did his Donde 1 performance where he came out as a Burning Man. He had himself set on fire, and he came out of that burning house. So we were looking at Bowie and then Ye, and these things started popping up. And I was like, okay, well, what does this Burning Man have to do? And the timing of it. It's suggestive here again of Ye's, what he's conveying, the body of symbols, the meaning of even his name, West. And we talked about Kanye West's world burning in 2022, how his beef with Pete Davidson, whose dad died on 9/11 at 33, was likely contrived and part of this bigger storyline where you're looking at the Kardashians as emblematic of the West and the West falling, the West burning, which is one of the themes that year. Westworld burning, season 4, Westeros burning, Game of Thrones. Now I'm going to continue through your comments. We'll move on from this for now. But there was a lot of stuff with Ye and his whole Yeezus thing, wearing the crown, the Black Christ archetype, which has been a repeated theme for some time as well. Elephant Tusk says, there's another faction we're at war with the Undead Legion behind the ice wall. They hint at this in Halo and StarCraft. Oh yeah, Game of Thrones too. They show you this in the later Ghostbusters film. Yeah, the Ghostbusters film, I watched it. And it seemed to indicate some kind of an EMP. Everybody freezing, everybody dying at the same time. And the frozen part of it, frozen empire, frozen EMP. Just like the Godzilla versus King Kong, a new empire, new EMP. So you can't separate EMP from the nuke, electromagnetic pulse, which would tie into the blackout, pitch black, leave the world behind, white noise. The EMP storyline I think it'd be a lot easier to fake that anyway. But again, that's been a recurring theme. And then if you go down to where the Space Needle is, you had the Electronic Music Project. Now it's something else, but it was called the EMP. So you've always had the EMP next to the Space Needle. And Fallout season, we just watched this Fallout season, and it ends with the Space Needle, and the background looks to be a nuked Vegas. We talked about Westworld yesterday, how they have this reoccurring symbol that looks like the Space Needle, and they have an EMP at the end. So the correlation between the Space Needle and the EMP is even evident in Westworld. But these things are, again, repeated themes. It's to the point where you can't really just discount it as mere coincidence. All right, going through my notes here on minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. We were talking about 8/4, which is tomorrow. Uh, Alex Jones says fake regarding that UFO video. There's this quote clearest UFO video in history filmed in Brazil. It's viral. You may have seen it. It's a triangular craft and it's going wild online. It appears to have landing gear, then it vanishes. Alex Jones says it's fake. And I'm wondering, you know, can we take away his credentials when it comes to calling things fake? I'm sorry, but if you're part of the PSYOP entertainment complex, if you're faking history for Big Brother, if you're part of the lie world order's infrastructure, then you kind of lose your auto hoaxology card, your skeptics card. You can't call out media fakery because you're actually fake. And it's nothing personal, but he's within the MSM plus box, which is a subset of the MSM. He's in a box within a box. He is in no place to diagnose reality. Like it's like, hello kettle, meet pot. The UFO is realer than Alex Jones. Or as real. These are constructs. Just like Trump. Trump might be an entertaining actor, but you're looking at a construct. And it's important not to mistake world stage constructs from the false worldview for the real thing, which is what a lot of people do because they have faith in media. Here's a short clip. Roseanne Barr says that she's not part of the Black Eye Club, even though one year she got hit in the back of the head and it caused her to have a black eye.
Black eye, remember that when I was at Kathy's house?
Yeah.
From hitting the back of my head. It was weird. And then I was, I showed everybody. I took a picture. They're like, oh, she's in the Black Eye Club. I mean, saying I was a Satanist and shit. Sometimes people, well, I don't know. It's some kind of ritual they do, and they all got a black eye.
Oh, but sometimes people, you're saying something.
Sometimes you just fall down and hit your eye.
Yeah.
You can't go. That's what I was saying. That they just go way too far with the. Like one time I did a magazine cover and the lady had me hold something over my eye. And I go, why would I want to do that? And she goes, just everybody does it. And I go, okay. Yeah. So I held a button over my eye. And now it shows all these people doing that. And they say they're in the Satan Club. Well, I just did it because the photographer told me.
Okay, so Roseanne says she's not in the Satan Club. She just made the Satan hand signs because the photographer told her to. Well, this makes sense to me. Because if you're in the programming class, and she's in the programming class, but at a low level. She's not really that high up to where she's in a position where she needs to know certain things. So she may not even be part of the club at that level. It doesn't mean that she's not a part of it. She's just not initiated. So I would say that no, she in all likelihood is part of it. And it's like you could be a well-intentioned, honest news reporter, but once you start reading those teleprompted lies, what are you? The world makes you into a liar. And the deeper you go into the lie world order's architecture, the higher up you go, the more of a liar you become. It's interesting that some of the most lyingest people in the world are lauded as heroes, like children. I want to be an astronaut. Oh yeah, these are the biggest liars on the planet. The biggest deceivers, the most shameless liars. And who knows how compromised they are, but I don't know what justifies it in their own minds. But we tell children, yeah, be like these guys. And they're all liars. They're all actors. And that's just a fact. And you may not like it if you think astronauts are heroes, but that's your conditioning. And I should also point out that you didn't go to the moon. Because people say, oh, we went to the moon. No, you weren't even born yet. Like people like to attach themselves to things. Like, no, you don't remember going to the moon. You never won the Super Bowl. And you don't remember Ed McMahon passing out big checks. People attach themselves to things. Elephant Tusk says everything oscillates between ages of fire and ages of ice. The Ice Lords don't want to give up their power. So the force that restrains the undead will unleash them upon the world. The age of fire will commence. So are you suggesting that there's hordes of zombies just beyond Antarctica? on their way over here? Like, how do they arrange the transportation? In Game of Thrones, the zombies were able to like walk beneath the lakes and just keep moving, kind of like Jason and Friday the 13th. I just don't know if that would work. But I happen to think that all the Frozen and EMP stuff has to do with nuclear winter, because Game of Thrones was all about winter is coming. And also, in symbolism, I've noted that frozen, freezing, cold represents secrecy. Darkness is ignorance. And so I think it could be secrecy. The age of, or the new empire, the new EMP, the frozen empire. Yeah, in fact, there's a phrase used by Jeff Bezos in 2017. This is before COVID lockdowns. He said, if humanity is going to survive, we're going to have to freeze civilization. He said we'll become a civilization of stasis. And if you want freedom and liberty, you have to go to space because Earth cannot handle it anymore. Listen to this. November 15th, 2017, Bezos went even further saying, in the long run, quote, freezing civilization in place. Oh, look, someone else is talking about his $42 million clock that will outlast human civilization built inside a mountain in Texas. But yeah, in this conversation, he said that we will have to go into a civilization of stasis if we want to maintain humanity, because in our present course, of course, we're going to die. Which is true if you believe every Netflix sci-fi. So here's what he says. We have two choices. A, we go to space. Or B, we switch over to a civilization of stasis. Now, you know who he's talking to, and this is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. He's talking about humanity's future and how we might have to lock things down to survive. And he's talking to a group of.
Today, not tomorrow, not next week.
He's sorry, that's your future president. I got to order a Kamala Harris shirt. He's talking to a room full of children about how they might actually end up on moon bases. Now, he knows it's fake. So what is he really selling them on? Living in some kind of sim? A Truman Show with craters? Like somewhere deep beneath Nevada or Denver or something?
Have proposed to NASA this idea of returning to the moon, and we would like to set up a cargo service for that. So it's kind of like, we call the program Blue Moon, and we have an architecture and some technologies that allow us to soft land large amounts of mass on the surface of the moon.
Yeah, he's talking to toddlers. Talking about permanent settlements on the moon. We'll move on from this. Civilization of stasis. Now, knowing what you know about Bezos. Now, Bezos is, and we talk about the world stage personas. He's Nimrod, the builder of the Tower of Babel. He's Dr. Evil. The Dr. Evil laugh, the Dr. Evil dong rocket. These are not coincidental alignments. The connection to Nimrod was cemented even further when he started building a Tower of Babel. Actually, it's in Virginia. I remember reading about this when it was greenlit. Amazon's new headquarters mocked for looking like the Tower of Babel from ancient Iraq. The Tower of Babel was the ultimate example of the axiom pride before the fall. If Jeff Bezos is the new King Nimrod. So someone else has actually compared him to Nimrod. Oh, here's my article. Jeff Bezos is building a literal Tower of Babel. The plan is to build a helix-shaped Tower of Babel headquarters. Got approved by the Arlington County Board. So here's my take on it. In Metascript Decoded, identified the space program as the symbolic Tower of Babel uniting man, one language, the internet, and a mission to go as one from Earth to heaven as the collective. And they've achieved this. Space has been accepted as the universal heaven. None of the other religions can compete. This is a tangible heaven you can go to. Scientism won. Nasatology won. Space is the replacement for these competing heavens. And Amazon stands out as representative of the Tower of Babel. And he's no longer the head of Amazon, he stepped down on the 33rd day of the year, which was 2/2, 2021. That was actually, I think it was Groundhog's Day. But he stepped down. But you have A to Z, all things published, sold, distributed through Amazon, a universalizer, a unifier. Then you have Blue Origin, which connects Bezos to Nimrod, the builder of the tower that allows man to invade heaven, just as Bezos did on July 20th, 2021, on the anniversary of the first man on the moon. So Apollo 11's anniversary, A11, Apollo 11, and he lifted off that day at 9:11 a.m. Apollo 11, 9/11. What do these two have in common? Same director, the guy who shot Kennedy. I have a few other things in here. I want to scroll down. Genesis 1:19. Therefore its name is called Babel, because the Lord confused the languages of all the earth, and from there scattered them abroad across the face of the earth. So I've been pointing out how 119 has been consistently associated with the Tower of Babel falling, and 9/11, the reverse. 9/11, the Twin Towers, the One World Trade Tower, which represents the Tower of Babel. And I've explained why a few times. It's 1,776 feet high, and 1776 isn't just the year that America was founded, and on your dollar bill, 1776 in the pyramid. But on the Masonic calendar, the year of light, 1776, according to this biblical lore, is when the Tower of Babel's construction begins. So here you have America as Babylon, 1776, the big tie-in here. And it goes even deeper, because if you look at 1776 AD and you convert it to the Masonic calendar, AL, for the year of light, you get 5776. Well, what's significant there? The pyramid in Giza is 5,776 inches high. So you have a correlation between the pyramid in Giza, America's founding, the Tower of Babel's founding, and the height of the One World Trade Tower. And if you get close up to the One World Trade Tower, there's a perspective, a view from below, where it just happens to look exactly like a pyramid. And there's nothing in architecture on this level that's accidental. They didn't say, oh, look, you get up close to our One World Trade Tower and it just happens to look like a pyramid with a capstone on it. Not a coincidence. But the 119 thing. So this is an article from 2021. I've been pointing out 119 has a lot to do with this falling of the tower. On 9/11, the Twin Towers go down, and you have James Cameron at the site of the Titanic. See, the sinking Titanic, the sinking Twin Towers. This is all symbolic of the West. Megapolis, the new movie that came out, Francis Ford Coppola, is about the Tower of Babel, New York. And it begins with an image of the Statue of Liberty and space junk falling on the trailer. So again, this is all reiterating the same symbolism. And I pointed out before that this director had previously said that he was going to release this movie and produce it before the year 2000, but then 9/11 ruined it, because he needed New York to be as it was pre-9/11 for the movie to make sense. So he waited 20 years. And he even excised an entire scene that contained a 9/11-like scenario. So his movie had 9/11 predictive programming. Scrapped that, releases it 20 years later, and it has space junk falling. And it talks about the end of an empire. So end of an empire, space junk, this all ties into something, because you see the Statue of Liberty with space junk falling behind her. At the Paris Olympics opening, you have the Statue of Liberty with the ISS behind her head. So, and then, of course, the nuke is intimated because it's from Planet of the Apes. So anyway, on 119, and this date is always interesting, because that's the date Donnie Darko came out, and it has planes falling from the sky. But this last January 19th, the movie ISS came out, and the world's getting nuked, and Russia and America are fighting for possession of the space station. 119. Space station falls. Okay, moving on. I mentioned this. Richard Branson launched 9 days prior on the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling. Well, there's a lot here. I'm not going to get into all of it now, but Dr. Evil building the Tower of Babel. Jeff Bezos actually laughs like Dr. Evil. He didn't always, but that's something they adopted later. Another world stage character that we've done extensive character studies on and breakdowns. Let's catch up on comments. Pippi Langstruff says, remember Moon Thing was a big deal in my fam. Moonfall was a movie that also contained copious predictive programming for stuff falling from the sky. Moonfall came out on 2/4/2022, then a year later, the Chinese spy balloon was shot down on that anniversary. Moonfall, again, this movie was ridiculous about the moon falling. But let me bring this up too. There's A119. So look at this as a combination between Apollo 11 and 119. This project was a plan for America to detonate a hydrogen bomb on the moon. Yeah, they were going to blast the moon, nuke the moon. The crazy plan to explode a nuclear bomb on the moon. Project A119. So again, 119 and this idea of nuking the moon and moonfall. These things are all strongly correlated. In fact, I think the actor, there's that movie Moon Knight, and there's the actor who died on a ski slope on 119 on that year. Yeah, that's the one. Actor Gaspard Ulliel died. This is January 19th. But anyway, probably fake. We were again looking at this at that time because there was a lot of stuff going on with the moon falling, Dogecoin. Remember Doge to the moon? There was all this talk about the moon and moonfall. And that's when we came up with this nuke the moon. But as far as this 119 number, in Leave the World Behind, the zip code is 11963. 11963, which is Sag Harbor, New York. Well, what do you get out of that? 119 and 1963, the year of JFK's assassination. Well, Leave the World Behind was released on 11/22. So there you have 11/22/1963, the JFK assassination, kind of tied into Leave the World Behind. Certainly not a coincidence. Nothing in that movie was a coincidence, and I went through it frame by frame. Very insightful. And the author of the book that became the movie had noted that people said his book was prescient and predictive of 2020. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, ever watch Total Recall? Interesting how there was a war on Mars that we all have amnesia about. Truth in plain sight. I will have to rewatch it because I think the plan is to make Earth Mars. In fact, I was watching this 60 Minutes when there's this astronaut, and this is back before I knew it was all fake, and he was talking about how there may have been an asteroid that hit Mars back when Mars was like Earth. With an atmosphere, it was like a jungle planet. And this asteroid punctured the atmosphere, destroyed it, apocalypse Mars. But biomatter was sprayed into space. Kind of like when the asteroid hit the Earth 66 million years ago, they say that it sprayed dinosaurs on the moon. There's dinosaur bones on the moon, according to science. Well, this astronaut said that Mars had been destroyed, but the biomatter sent into space via the mechanism of panspermia made its way across the solar system and rained down on the Earth. So the Earth got life from Mars, now a dead planet. So this is Mars 2. And they cut to a commercial for some show called Salvation about an asteroid about to hit the Earth in 6 months. Okay, moving on here. Bach Precision says Nimrod is killed by an insect going in his nostrils and eating through his brain according to Islamic lore. Ollie Goering says RFK Jr.'s brainworms. Yeah, the RFK Jr. thing's strange. You know, he developed his his vocal um, condition when he turned 42. His dad died at 42. His spasmodic dysphonia. Um, I'm not saying it's fake. I mean, why would you fake something like that? But it is kind of strange. Okay, let's move on. Tomorrow is 8/4. Huge deal. Again, tomorrow, August 4th. Will it be the PSYOP to follow up the last Trump shooting? Will they be on target? I'd brought up that sniper in Saving Private Ryan who was shot in the eye, and the actor has Trump's birthday. It's voluminous. It's incredible. When you look at the number of references to Trump and head wound that will be some big shocking event, it's endless. Do you remember Heather MacDonald, that actress who fell and hit her head, and you can hear the thump on the floor? She's got Trump's birthday, hit on the head. We were just, there's so many of these things piling up, and they've all been pointed out largely by JL, but yeah, so it's already 8/4. This is a huge deal. So tomorrow will be like 7/13, but way more intense. And according to the storyline, there's supposedly going to be a wound that takes out the right eye, and that he's seemingly dead for a few days, and then he comes back. Hey, really quick, here's Dr. Evil slash Nimrod, Jeff Bezos, and there's a reason why he wears a cowboy hat. Same with Elon Musk. Why are these guys wearing cowboy hats? It's because they want to convey the idea that these billionaires are space cowboys, and that we can't have that, that these are sexists. And they said the same about both of them, that their companies are overwhelmingly sexist, male dominated, and they have their big dong rockets. And it's true. But the messaging here with the cowboy hats is that they're reckless, space cowboys, capitalists, that they're going to go wrangle some stray meteors and mine them and bring down billions of dollars of wealth, trillions of dollars of wealth, and disrupt our economies and just make capitalism destroy everything. So this whole idea here is that that needs to go. That space is not the new frontier, the Wild West. You know how they sent, in fact, Bezos sent Captain Kirk to space, William Shatner. Well, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, space, the final frontier. And he goes up there and he says the Earth is being destroyed. We need to save the Earth. So now the whole point of it is they're trying to get people to realize that space isn't this new manifest destiny. It's not going to be for space cowboys and billionaires to exploit, but it's a commons. It's a global commons. So they're making bad examples out of Musk and Bezos and Branson so that they can talk about more responsible ways to collectively approach outer space. And they've already introduced space environmentalism. It's already a thing. But knowing what you know about the symbolism and Jeff Bezos, when you see him here celebrating his fake rocket, spraying champagne everywhere, this is all just essentially obelisk worship. I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but that is what it is. Trump added 8.4 trillion to the national debt. Now, 8.4, just pointing things out, kind of stood out. I'm not sure what to expect tomorrow. I don't think they can pull off anything live in front of an audience of the nature that has been described by JL. And I don't think they're going to kill Body Double. They never kill anybody. And he suggested that maybe this next time will be a closed movie set. Since they've already done it, they've already convinced people it's a thing, now they can do it in a closed movie set where they have total control over the special effects. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. By the way, phones are open if you want to call in. I know we had some people trying to call in. For the next half hour, phones will be open. Nicotrama says, if it happens tomorrow, I'm divorcing my wife and moving to Glendale, California to join JL's cult. Now, it depends on what you mean by if it happens. Like, if they really shoot him and he comes back from the dead and the world is just caught up in some kind of psychotic possession and spell and everything just gets biblical, then I can understand that. But if they fake it and we're doing media deconstructionism, it's no time to get culty. It's time to see who's paying attention. But I understand your point. We have to support content creators, and the best way to support JL's work is just to share his channel and let people arrive at their own conclusions based on the information he provides. Bach Precision says the last president who survived a shooting while giving a speech was Theodore Roosevelt. He survived and then gave an 84-minute speech. These number codes are incredible. The 26th president finished his 84-minute speech after surviving an assassination attempt by John Schrank, a former saloon keeper. He said, I give you my word, I do not care a rap about being shot. Not a rap. So he kind of downplayed it. He didn't say he took a bullet for democracy. People are selling another version of the Trump shot glass with a bullet in it. Mango Penguin says, Joe Rogan mentioned a flat earther on his show tonight. Said the guy was R-worded. Whoever that is. Any flat earthers here? He was probably talking about Flat Earth Dave, who's a Fed. I don't know who else he'd be referring to. I mean, maybe Mark Sargent? I don't know. I'd like to know. I heard that they were trying to get Dearth on his show. Now, Dearth was on Alex Jones, and Alex Jones says, let's talk about Donald Trump for a minute, and Dearth said, I don't pay attention to the news. And that was a huge flaw, in my view, because the flat earth question is valid. The flat earth model, untested, not a model, not valid, not any more valid than the globe model. The question is what's important. What is the nature of the question? Why is it being raised? Is it valid? Well, are we talking about a scientific paradigm? Is science not rooted in self-questioning, questioning its own claims and finding the best explanations? And if your evidence consists of images on a screen that look fake, that could be faked, that are fakeable, that are part of a media apparatus that is known for lying, lying is endemic and systemic, then you'd be a fool to say, well, they tell lies everywhere else, but we can trust them with space. We can trust them with this multi-billion-dollar a year or trillion-dollar a year slush fund. We can trust them here. They lie on history. They lie in the news. They gaslight and lie as a standard practice. They brainwash us in every way, but we can trust the maps. Why would they lie? I love that question. Why would they lie? Why would they lie? Like, what planet are you? I mean, that's just insane to me that you would even ask that. And that says, I have total faith. It's like, that's astoundingly naive. A total lack of situational awareness. Like, there are some people who say, well, maybe this Trump shooting was real. You've been studying this stuff for years. You've been studying their past history of lying, and now you think suddenly they're telling the truth? That is incongruent. That is capitulating to the mind control, saying, I am no longer the arbiter of what I believe. I'm going to believe what's on the screen. No, you don't have to kneel before the monolith. You don't have to press your face up against the screen. You can reject it. It's as ridiculous to think that the next event will be real as it would to think that the next moon landing is going to be real. It's a house of cards. And the bottom stories are all shoddy and fake. You can't build on top of that. I think I called it yesterday, a big pile of crap upon an edifice of lies. That's MSM Plus. That's alt media. And you can just reject it. Take out your Hitchens razor. If there's no evidence, dismiss it. Yesterday we talked about the Marilyn Manson artwork. His album, As Sick as the Secrets Within. And I'd pointed out that he's on a new label called Nuclear Blast. And he's the Antichrist superstar. And in one of his more controversial videos, he played JFK getting shot. So you have Antichrist, JFK, and the video's release was delayed because JFK Jr.'s death. So it's even connected to the bigger script. But the and this isn't the album cover, it's just a single that he released, and it has this shard of a mirror that looks like Nevada. So we were looking at this as being potentially significant, and then realized that he's been talked about in the last few years in light of his relationship with Evan Rachel Wood from Westworld, and how the character Dolores versus the Man in Black mirrored Evan Rachel Wood's relationship with Marilyn Manson, the Man in Black. And I brought this up yesterday, and I have a lot of details to support this. My thinking on it here is that this is all a PR stunt. That the last 4 years, the controversy around him has all just been an engineered PR stunt. None of this is coincidental. But anyway, in Westworld season 4, where you have the EMP and the Space Needle-like blasts, which again would also connect to Fallout, season 4 opens up with the Man in Black on the Hoover Dam. So there's some Nevada connections there worth looking at. And again, the whole nuclear blast records and the Antichrist stuff and playing JFK. These are unignorable connections. And then he had some involvement with Dawn Day 2, which was that 2022 on a Tuesday ceremony where Ye had that burning house thing. Very bizarre ceremony. It was dark. It looked like a blackout, like post EMP in a flood. And then one more point, and JL brought this up. Marilyn Manson is a combination of Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson. Well, Marilyn Monroe died on 8/4, and she was intimately connected with JFK. So you know the JFK head wound thing, 8/4, that date. So there's fascinating connections here. You do a mind map on something like this, and it's pretty straightforward. I got this ad on Twitter. It says the most badass 24K Cybertruck. It's like, I don't know why I'm being targeted for something like this. I would totally drive it, but honestly, UPS trucks are more attractive and probably cheaper. This is just a big joke. I think the Cybertruck is as big a joke as the Starship. And these are just movie things, like movie props. This was actually out of Blade Runner. Blade Runner, which was set in the future, which then was in Los Angeles, November 2019. And the whole Cybertruck thing, well, that's when these Cybertrucks came out, and people pointed out it's just like the movie. It's like you're in a movie. Elon Musk is a movie character. You're following movie characters. You're literally in the movie if you take it literally. Mango Penguin says they're cyber stalking you, Tim. Who's cyber stalking me? Well, we've been stalked. We've been definitely stalked. I concur with that. Someone keeps sending me these things about how in Tennessee they're banning chemtrails. I just want to point out that no, nobody's banning chemtrails. Politicians are pandering to ignoramuses. And I wanted to point out that the Tennessee House of Representatives did pass a bill to ban geoengineering, which is intentionally modifying the environment to combat global warming. So it's kind of weird. I don't believe in global warming, so why would I be against global warming remediation? But anyway, they passed the bill on April the 1st. April Fool's Day. I don't know if this is some kind of a sick joke, but I think it is. I think it's a joke. This is an article from Lifehacker. To ban chemtrails, you'd have to actually ban all jet trails and all jet travel over Tennessee. And this says Tennessee also is going to outlaw releasing anything that, quote, affects temperature or the intensity of sunlight, which in a roundabout way, the author of this piece suggests that, well, sunglasses are an apparatus that affect the intensity of sunlight. So, and umbrellas. So you could make the case that the letter of the law bans heaters, air conditioners, stoves, and ovens, as these are all apparatuses that expressly change the temperature. And water is a chemical, so spraying water on people at amusement parks to change the temperature could be also banned, and those are those cooling misters. So this is just a joke. I think it's a joke. The fact that it came out on April Fool's Day, don't fall for it. Chemtrails don't exist. But what's funny is there are people on Twitter saying that their lung issues are clearing up, that they can breathe better. Like we literally have people claiming that they had chemtrail lung, but they banned geoengineering and now they're cured. What do you call that? Self-deception, lying, confabulation. I mean, what do you call it? Truth-ertainment? I mean, truthers are an entirely different category of liar. Because with traditional religions, people can make all kinds of claims. Like that one false prophet I mentioned who said he talked to Jesus 8 times. He's lying. Jesus did not sit down with him and talk about the fake alien invasion. Like we can just say it, he's lying. But most people hold back from calling somebody a liar over their spiritual experiences. And it's because it would be rude. It's like, what, are you going to call them a delusional liar because they talk to God? You give someone the benefit of the doubt. Or you just let them have their fantasy, their comfort blanket, whatever it is, or their uh, mechanism for getting through the day, fine. But it's different when somebody tries to tell you that, yes, I talked to God and he said this, and now I am an authority speaking on behalf of God. Like we can just start calling that stuff out. And I think it's the same thing with truthers. Just it's a little different, but it's the same in the sense that they make these incredible statements about what they believe. And you know they're lying. But we don't have to treat truther beliefs as sacred. So you might want to respect someone's religious beliefs if it's coming from some old book, because tradition. But trutherism is a new religion. And I'm just saying, feel free to criticize it. Criticize their neo-eschatology, their paranoia, their phobias, their toxic mind viruses. Like I'm a critic of trutherism because I feel like it's just an alternative religion to the mainstream religion. Because the MSM is the de facto state church. It's the worldview. Nasatology completes it, but it is a religion. And just because the truthers are going against the MSM doesn't mean they're not part of its religion. They're a different denomination. They are the Protestant to the mother church. And they don't want its injectable Eucharist. And they don't want its priesthood. But they still accept its worldview. They haven't stepped outside of it. But we're going to do some work on this. I mean, one of our intentions is to take our think tank and drive down to the center of the world stage and just really relentlessly attack its infrastructure, question its premises, and do as much as we can, I think, to send out a signal to as many people who have already deprogrammed so that we can amass as a separate entity what I call the parallel media. T Latte says, what do you think of Michaela Montgomery's speech at the Trump rally in Georgia? Curious because they're going crazy over her and it's the last day before 8/4. Yeah, I think that's significant. It's probably, and I saw that. And I think it may be that he's going to be looked at as possibly dangerously popular or even marketable to voter blocs that the Democrats don't want him to be popular with because they're trying to brand him as a racist, which, you know, in all fairness, he may not be or espouse what you consider to be racist viewpoints, but when you look at the people behind him, the Nick Fuenteses and all these, their nationalism and their anti-globalism, you know, these are all just really just ways of expressing what the left sees as racist. So, like, I don't consider people racist when they say, oh, it's a DEI thing. That's a buzzword they picked up on the internet. They don't know, but to the left, if you say DEI, you're basically throwing racial epithets. They've weaponized the language in such a way that the left will always see the right as racist, bigots, xenophobes, etc. So you see Trump branded with all this stuff. And that Project 2025 thing was meant to denigrate him and bring him down, and he's distanced himself from it, and it's made a lot of people mad. But I don't take sides in this. I happen to think that critical race theory and critical Jew theory are two perspectives on the fringes of the political horseshoe. These are it's a bifurcated war, and each one has its preferred scapegoat, its preferred bad guy, its preferred source for all evil. And one of them is the secular view, and the other one is the more traditional view. And one of them says it's this group, it's evil, it's Satan, and they have their moral panics. And the other side says it's systemic racism, it's hate, and it's whiteness, and it's Western values and capitalism. And then you have the traditional view saying, well, the way they live is going to incur the wrath of God, and we're going to have an apocalypse. And the other side says the way they live is going to incur the wrath of Gaia, and we're going to have a climate apocalypse. They're equally brainwashed on both sides. I'm not on either side. I'm a conscientious objector to the war. Mango Penguin says, what do you all recommend for a show to watch? Right now, I'm watching something unrelated to predictive programming called The Witcher. And I feel irresponsible when I'm watching movies that don't specifically relate to this. But the special effects are incredible. And it's funny to me when you have these like fantasy, it's like elves, witches, trolls, swords, sorcery, and all this stuff. But then they have like a 21st century lexicon, and they use expressions. They make references to evolution and psychology. It's like this is not exactly even close to how things would be. These are anachronisms that are just so out of place. It's like there's no way these elves read anything by Charles Darwin. And there's no way this guy knows about Freud and projection, but they talk like they do, and I think it's entertaining. Travis Cloud says Witcher is fire AF. Oh, it's based on a video game. Okay. Okay, I see. As far as my list of things to watch for predictive programming, I need to watch The Prestige. That's something that's been on my list for some time. I might even try to watch it tonight. But if you really want to know what's going to happen on the news tomorrow, or in the world tomorrow, you just got to watch Netflix. It's a mirror. It's a looking glass. It's like a scrying mirror, is what you would call it. But even if it doesn't have an overtly political message, there's likely something there in the subtext. Like maybe they're putting a strong female protagonist out in front because they're paving the way for Kamala Harris. And I've seen this as a trend for a long time. I read the Robert Jordan Wheel of Time series when I was a kid, and I watched it on Netflix. And they totally turned it into something that maybe in the book in the book it's implied that the males who get in touch with the one power go crazy. They become evil sorcerers. So it's a matriarch, or the women rule the world in this Wheel of Time series. But I'm pretty sure that the High Priestess, or whatever the title was, is a template for Kamala Harris. And I've seen this as a trend for several years, where we're being conditioned. The masses are being conditioned. The collective psyche, the zeitgeist is being painted a certain way. And then there's Veep. I've seen a lot of Veep. And I haven't watched the show, but I've seen a lot of clips suggesting that Veep is likely the source for the next presidency. So I don't have any reason to think that Trump's going to win, by the way. And I am voting for Harris as a protest vote against Trutherville, as a sarcastic, ironic statement. If you're voting unironically, what's wrong with you? You're going to put your faith and trust in somebody who believes in moon landings, or knows they're fake and lies about it. Jay Digg says Silo Season 2, Episode 1 airs on November the 15th. It's relevant to how a small group maintain control over the masses. The programmers. And one of the worst arguments I hear is there's too many people in the know. Like 400,000 people couldn't fake the moon landing. And they addressed that in the movie Fly Me to the Moon. The president doesn't even know they're faking the moon landing. So is Silo a movie? I'm guessing it's is it about what bunkers, post nuke apocalypse? Is it a Fallout? And there's another movie coming out called Borderlands, which I'm pretty sure is based on a video game. I was checking out movie posters at the theater the other day, and it looked like a mashup between Fallout and Suicide Squad. Like they're just throwing all these symbols and characters and themes into an AI, and it's just like a cell shooter just spitting out these scripts, and they produce them just to make sure they hit all the right memes and talking points for your programming and entertainment. Oh, here we go. Second season post-apocalyptic. If it's not post-apocalyptic, it's not getting produced. When I was heavily involved in publishing, I was noting a trend, and I got some recommendations. They said, if you want to make money in the future in publishing, get into cli-fi. And I was more into horror and sci-fi. But what is cli-fi? Well, cli-fi is climate fiction, literature that deals with climate change, and the bad guy is now climate change. In fact, the first cli-fi book was called The Coming Superstorm by Art Bell. The Coming Global Superstorm by Art Bell and Whitney Strieber. Whitney Strieber is a guy who was abducted by aliens and got probed, if you believe it, which I don't. But a 1999 book about global warming and how it would screw up the planet. And I think this is also the book, this is also when, because Art Bell is the one who made chemtrails a reality for the believers. There are people who say, you wouldn't know because you weren't born back then, but there weren't trails when I was a kid. It's like, yeah, there were. But they weren't branded and mislabeled until the Art Bell show. Jay Diggs says like a more serious tone Fallout. That's what I thought. They're all the same. Now let's continue through my notes. And this is Infinite Plane Saturday, but tomorrow we're going to be live. I'm going to be monitoring the news all day because tomorrow is 8/4. I think it's going to be a big deal. And we haven't even gone through all of the Donald Trump predicted programming for the head wound thing. The album's coming out. The reason I brought up the Manson one is because of the timing. It just got dropped. And again, Antichrist Superstar. Everybody's calling it a huge comeback for Manson. See, he disappeared. His last show was in 2019. Then 2020, these controversies came out. And then that kind of quieted down. It's 4 years later. They're calling this a huge comeback. And it may be significant because the Antichrist theme, Trump 2020, Trump 2024 comeback, there is something like that. In fact, what is this trending? I'm looking on Twitter. And when Trump shows up at the DNC, they made up the stage to look like Elvis comeback special. Like, what is that? Okay, someone here says there are Axel F movie posters all over the NYC transit system and the British psyop Axel. Fascinating. He's correlating these various, the psyops of these movies coming out, just like Thine Ears Shall Bleed and then Trump. Now look at this. This is nominative determinism. I brought this up earlier. Name-driven outcomes. The hypothesis is that people tend to gravitate towards areas of work that reflect their names. The name fits because people are possibly subconsciously making it fit. Now, I don't know if this is true or even observable. However, Anthony Weiner, he's going to be, his whole political career was sidelined because he tweeted an image of his manhood to a person over Twitter DMs or something, or he made it public by accident. Then Andrew Breitbart caught it. But again, that's nominative determinism. We've had so many examples of world stage. Like I watched this news story about some guy who was trying to hijack or carjack a vehicle at Chick-fil-A, which has a K in it, by the way, to all the Mandela affected. Well, anyway, there was a carjacker trying to steal someone's car. And the story goes that another customer intervened. Here it is. Chick-fil-A worker stops an attempted carjacking. His second day on the job. So I'm looking at this story. Just, sounds like a normal story. Nothing extraordinary about it. But you know how he stopped the carjacking? He picked up a branch. He picked up a stick. And he used the stick to stop it. Care to guess what the guy's name was? Mr. Branch. Yeah, Mr. Branch with the stick stops a carjacking. And we have many examples where it seems like these might even be inside jobs. I mean, there's coincidences, but then here goes. William Branch approached her wielding a branch. He demanded her keys. She began to scream for help, and a Chick-fil-A employee came out. We have to do a compilation, though, of all these world stager names. We had a list of like 50 or 60 names on the old server that was cut down by Discord. Bach Precision says Anthony Weiner's scandal was made viral by Opie and Anthony on their radio show. Anthony Cumia looks like Anthony Weiner's doppelganger. Right. I know someone who's pretty convinced that Anthony Cumia is an alter ego for fakeologist. And I don't necessarily think they sound the same, but... And does he have enough time for that? I remember there was this totally sane person. Maybe she had toxoplasmosis. Her name was Xmas Eve Evil. She's like the online girlfriend of David J on Twitter. And she said that the amount of content that Tim is putting out is suggestive of multiple Tims, that there are three of me. And she said the Illuminati apparently respects labor laws, and they're not going to have me working this much. She didn't say it in those words, but she said there's no way that this is just one person. It's multiples. Russell Haig 888 says media analysis channels are growing faster than original content channels. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I say parallel media, and you go to parallelmedia.org, and you'll have basically I'll put a link to it, what I consider to be a manifesto. And I'm not going to read it right now, but here's what's going to happen. Media deconstructionists, that's what we are. Skeptics, media analysis channels. We're not regurgitating mainstream trying to get clicks. We're not trying to climb their pyramid of lies. We're not trying to imitate or in any way curry favor with them. We don't want to breathe their air. It's toxic. It has chemtrails and climate change in it. We're on the outside. And what will happen is this. Right now, we're just the IPS think tank, fakeologists, JLB's think tanks. There aren't that many groups of people who are consolidating on this basis, but it's going to blow up. By the time I have 10,000 copies of Autohoaxology 101 distributed, it will be big. There'll be a larger pool of people who are approaching media from this perspective. And the more that there are, the bigger this separate ecosystem becomes. And the reason why auto-hoaxing took off is we could compete with mainstream. I could go on with 30 subs and I could say, oh, the Vegas shooting was fake. Now suddenly my video is right there alongside CNN's video and I'm getting all these hits. And now, granted, most of the people are disagreeing with me, but that doesn't matter. We were getting traffic. We were being competitive. Then they started censoring it and they cut us off. Now, had they played the game fair and allowed skeptics to compete with the non-skeptical media, the non-skeptical media would be huge. It'd be as big as the alt media. Alt media is there to prevent a skeptical anti-media. And, anti-media is not a good term anymore because the alt media considers itself to be anti-media, but they are the media. They don't get it. So we are anti-media, is what I should say. We're anti-anti and anti-pro. But what we're saying, it's parallel is the point. So the parallel media has the potential. I think it's eventual. I think we've already started the ball rolling here. And it's going to blow up beyond our control. It just has to establish itself as a self-aware demographic, its own perspective, and it's there. The framework is there, philosophically and otherwise. We can do this. We can metastasize it and create a huge problem for MSM and alt media. But we have to lead the way. It's not going to happen on its own. Gatekeepers need to be deposed, exposed. We have to rattle some cages. It's going to take a few pointed PR events, but we are very well equipped, I think. And my thing, the reason I want to highlight this is that there's no cap on it. Alt media has always been controlled, gate kept, limited hangouts, guardrails, grifters, and now it's all been grafted onto the GOP. It's just a bunch of Republicans now. They're politicos. They're caught up in the mainstream and they're just regurgitating alt media stuff. It's a wasteland. And the ones who are doing any kind of script analysis are usually caught up with grifting for clicks based on bad predictions and false prophecies. And we're not doing any of that. What we're doing is pure, but it has to be established as a pure core, and the ideology has to remain pure, and that's what this quarantining is about. We're trailblazing at the moment. And as far as our methodology here, we have axioms, fake until proven real. If it's an extraordinary event with an obvious political agenda attached to it, etc. We have a framework, and that's what Auto Hoaxology 101 is about. And this is not co-optable. Trutherville has all kinds of ideas and conspiracy theories and takes on things, but they're always going to be drowned out by the Alex Joneses and all the big channels by design. You're not meant to have a voice in alt media if you're not part of the programming class, and you're not. You're part of the deprogrammed class, and we're new. There were not any deprogrammed until post 2012, and even then, the deprogramming has been in layers, in levels, and we are at a level of deprogramming that wasn't even possible 5 years ago. Much less 10 years ago. I mean, 20 years ago, it would not have been possible to have arrived at the correct conclusions with regard to what media is and what psyops are and the role they play in our lives and worldview formation. So we're the beneficiaries of glitches in the matrix getting out and people jumping on these things and people refusing to listen to gatekeepers. It's not like we're able to figure this out because we listen to alternate media and Stu Peters and Alex. No, we arrived at this because we ignored the controlled opposition. We looked at what they were trying to distract us from. It is a forest of fakery. All the trees are fake. And you have these truthers who run laps around several big trees for years and years and years. And it's like, look, we're here clear cutting the forest of misinformation here. We're cutting them all down. In fact, the Daily Beast got it right. The Daily Beast did a story on a flat earth conference, and we were there, and they described the IPS as clear cutting a forest of information. They said that we were literally clear cutting a forest of information. I'm like, okay, well, it makes sense because the entire forest is misinformation. The world stage consists of misinformation. Some of it is true information in isolation, but it rests upon an edifice of lies. Its framing is wrong. Like, again, you can be honest, pure of heart, but you read a teleprompter, you're now a liar. Any perspective that is centered in the world stage box, whether it's MSM, MSM Plus, or even Woketown, any perspective from that box is going to be filtered through certain establishment lies. There's just no way around it. You have to step outside of their false world construct and have an off-world stage perspective to claim any objectivity. It's not a hyperbolic statement to say that we're the only objectivists in the world today. The objectivists put their philosophy through the mainstream media, which is a reality wood chipper. I mean, we're a fake news wood chipper. We do the opposite. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. Tomorrow's going to be a big day, and I'll have phones open the entire time because it's 8-4. 8-4, huge deal. Again, is this it? Is this going to be the Trumpocalypse? And if it is, it's good for us. It's every single psyop, every major psychological operation moves us forward. It gives us an opportunity to differentiate what we're doing from what alt media is doing. That's why I'm looking forward to the election. As everyone's chasing Trump and Kamala and talking about this mainstream claptrap, we can focus on what we are doing. A laser like focus on the methodology. That's all that really matters here. Because we have figured or learned simply that if you become the arbiter of what you believe, you don't need to be told what to believe. You can discern it for yourself, and everyone else is just lost in the sea of irrelevance, grasping for blue checks. And we were mocking Mark Cuban, who said, "If Musk allows the peasants to buy blue checks, then who will I follow?" Like, he didn't know who to follow, so how is he going to get his information? So it didn't occur to him to be an arbiter over what he believes. He has always outsourced it. And that's one of the objectives here. They want you to be a passive recipient, recipient of propaganda, not an active media consumer or analyst. And what we're doing is active. To be a mainstreamer is to be a passive recipient and a reactor. To be alt media, whether Woketown or Trutherville, is to be passive and reactive. We're not reacting. Nobody pulls my strings. They could nuke Seattle, and I'm not going to, my heart rate's not going to go up. If it does, it won't be fear. It'll be because I'm happy, because I know it's fake. Like, they don't control my reactions. I don't get controlled by the media. They can't troll me or trigger me. And I notice that a lot of truthers are being triggered on culture war stuff. Because if they can't get you with the fake shootings, they can't get you with the fake terror attacks and neo-eschatologies, they throw in culture war stuff, and it riles people up in the same way along the same lines. And to participate in the Psy War, is to lose. It's a rigged game. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the next 2 months. Hopefully tomorrow is a big deal. They play all the Illuminati playing cards at once. We shall see. So I'll see you all tomorrow. Subscribe to the newsletter to get the archives, and we'll continue this conversation then. This is Lucifer Tim, 33rd degree.
This is the court of the 33rd degree. I was taken aback, a little suddenly. myself very well.